Thank you very much, everyone, and good afternoon, good morning, or good evening, depending with where you are. My name is Victor Otieno. I'm the County Chief Officer at Nairobi County under Digital Economy and Startups, which is almost like an assistant minister, depending with whichever country you're coming from. So maybe just to give us a bit of context, of course, I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir, and just focusing on Kenya generally in terms of the innovation ecosystem. Looking at Kenya, and this is the reason why the reason why the governor of Nairobi set up this particular subsector, which is called digital economy and startups. So, of course, as the name suggests, my focus is looking at digital economy and startups generally, and ways in which you can be able to support. We are looking at, in terms of indices, we see Kenya, do very well based on different global indices, whether it's the Global Innovation Index, whether it's the Global Startup Ecosystem Index, looking at venture capital funding, coming into Africa, Kenya, standing around average 17% of all VC funding that is coming into Africa. Of course, the leaning of this funding still is heavily towards fintech, which does not in any way indicate that fintech is the only technology that is there in Africa, but it's just because the infrastructure in terms of socioeconomic structure of Africa is that because banks or financial institutions have delayed for a long time in bringing financial access to small businesses, that has become a niche where a lot of startups have ventured into, and of course VC money follows where it can be able to get a good return on investment as well as good payback period. So of course we see Kenya specifically playing a major role in that in terms of being able to attract that kind of funding. So that's number one. We see also on the other hand, global multinationals setting up shop in Kenya just to be able to take advantage of whether it's talent or regulatory environment or policy environment. So we have Amazon, we have Facebook, we have Google, MasterCard, Microsoft, Visa, etc., and all these big tech setting up shop in Kenya, again, which is an indication of the maturing or maturity of the ecosystem. We, of course, have M-Pesa as a major innovation that, continues to fly the Kenyan flag. But our theory of change is there are so many M-Pesas based on different technologies that are there, and we want to be able to support them for them to be able to scale and grow. So ultimately, my job description after we talk about AI, blockchain, or whatever type of technology is, we are looking to be able to support job creation. So, so that for me is a big KPI. Currently in Kenya, we have close to 1 million young graduates who are entering into the labor market who cannot be able to secure jobs. So currently we have small businesses taking up or employing close to 80% of new jobs being created is actually being created within the micro, small, medium enterprises, where majority of them are informal. So we need to be able to look for other sectors that can be able to support job creation and just be able to give economic opportunities to either Kenyans or even Africans. So we believe that innovation generally is a space that, if well supported, can be able to support startups and innovators to be able to grow. So we came up with a strategic plan for the next 5 years, which runs from 2023 to 2027. And of course, this strategic plan is based on the feedback that we received from the startup ecosystem in Kenya, as well as literature review that we found, of course, especially in Africa, and specifically a strategy paper called the Science and Technology Innovation Strategy for Africa under AU. So this is, even if you're talking about AI and research, that becomes a first port of call, for lack of a better words, in terms of guidance for all member states to be able to adopt or to support their respective digital economies. So under the STISA strategy, there are different components that have been advised for member states to develop in order to have a vibrant digital economy. Number one is looking at infrastructure. So it's very important that African countries are able to develop the different components of infrastructure within the countries. And of course, infrastructure comes in form of roads, electricity, internet, incubation spaces, or centers of excellence, whichever way you call them, so that we're able and not only just build the infrastructure, but enable, decentralize those infrastructure to allow more young people to be able to engage. It's one thing to have an infrastructure in terms of electricity, but it's focused on urban areas. If you don't bring internet to rural areas or to areas where, otherwise young people are not able to access, then even if you're talking about AI, then probably they're not able to play within that space. So it's very important that we're able to decentralize resources. And Nairobi County, of course, is doing exactly that in terms of being able to partner with private co-working spaces, incubation hubs, academia, just to ensure that we're able to democratize this type. Number two, under the strategy, we are looking at talent. Again, we can talk about AI, but if we don't consistently build a pipeline of talent focused on AI, blockchain, or whichever technology, then it's a pipe dream. We will continue to consume technology rather than to produce it. We can talk about ChatGPT, but the question is, where is that developed? Who gets the maximum value from the ChatGPT outside of me writing a speech using ChatGPT? Maybe probably you can just scroll. I think I can be able to scroll it. So this is exactly what I was talking about. So exactly that. So I was talking about the STISA strategy. So the strategy basically has informed how the county government has structured its priority areas. So as I mentioned, we're looking at infrastructure, we're looking at policy environment around AI or whichever other type of technology, looking at what they're calling entrepreneurship, which basically means collaboration. So yes, you can talk about technology, but AI, but even if we were to build infrastructure and train talent, if there is no optimal collaboration between government, academia, private sector, venture capital, etc., again, we might not be able to achieve much. So we have adopted a two-pronged approach. Number one is looking at the literature review and just looking at, of course, global best practice, as well as this particular strategy under AU, as well as feedback from the ecosystem. We were able to come up with a simple, this is of course a very simplistic way of looking at how we are supporting AI and basically innovation in Kenya, looking at ease of doing business. Again, policy environment, how do we catalyze and create a policy environment that allows AI and all the different components around AI, blockchain, and all these different types of technology to thrive. So I'm sure you all have the use case or case study of WorldCoin. Again, there is again a lot of debate around WorldCoin. So how do you support? The question is for me is how do you support these types of technology without just brushing them off completely? Of course, they have their own challenges here and there, but I think as a government, our role is to be able to see and have conversations with the ecosystem and co-create policy around different types of technology. And AI, of course, being a very hot topic, around issues around ethics, etc. We need to be very careful and just ensure that we're able to create a policy environment that is able to mitigate the risks that come with AI, but also be able to, at the same time, create a policy environment that allows this type or use cases around AI to be applied in different facets of the economy. So one of the areas that we're looking out for as a county government is looking at the policy environment. And of course, this policy environment is underpinned on research. Say, for example, currently we have, I'm supporting the Blockchain Association of Kenya in terms of, developing a blockchain policy of sorts and the regulation that would follow. So that would mean that we need to be able to rely on research and the different use cases across the globe to ensure that we are able to get a policy that is not copy and paste, but that is able to work for us as Kenya. So of course there is a role in which research plays in terms of being able to create such policies, such regulation. Looking at establishing Nairobi as African startup market launchpad, again, we want to be at the forefront in terms of supporting different facets of technology to be launched from Kenya. So Kenya is a very good launchpad already in terms of Kenyans being very receptive to different types of technology. And that's why we see multinationals setting up, and of course they can be able to do the MVPs from Kenya, which then of course they can be able to apply the real products globally. We want to be able to expose our startups to global startup or innovation forums. Again, you are as good as how much you're exposed. So the more you're able to explore different jurisdictions, different environment in terms of how they have been able to apply AI in solving different challenges, or use blockchain or whatever type of technology, again, exposing startups and programmers and devs, etc., is a key area for us. We want to be able to increase our interaction with the ecosystem and the different facets of the ecosystem. Of course, you see me coming to this particular session in terms of AI, Africa AI Summit, is just to be able to have ears on the ground and get feedback, which of course we can be able to use as a government to ensure that our policy and our programs respond to the ecosystem. And we've strived a lot to ensure that we increase our interaction with different ecosystem players, whether it's incubators, whether it's VCs, financiers, whether it's startups, and different players within the ecosystem, to ensure that our programs basically resonate with the ecosystem. Funding is a major issue, as I indicated in my opening remarks. There is a skewness towards funding towards fintech. So the question is, how do we ensure that startups who are in AI, startups who have an underpinning of blockchain, or startups in different sectors, in agriculture, in education, get funding. So we need to be able to have some affirmative programs that ensure that we direct funding towards other sectors or other types of technology. And of course, lastly, is ensuring that we are able to decentralize infrastructure, which are basically incubation hubs, together with internet and all the other services that come through such a space, to ensure that we are able to spread and ensure that there is equity and democracy in terms of our young people being able to access these facilities. So it should not be because you are rich or because of whatever advantage that you have. Each and every young person in Nairobi specifically should be able to get an opportunity to enter into a space where they can be able to develop a product, develop a service based on whatever tool that is there. So this is basically a concept around incubation center. And the reason why we are sharing this is because this is the only way in which we can be able to catalyze corporate venture capital. So we have Kenya being largely driven by institutional investors. So these are, of course, your VCs that are bringing money from the global north, which is fine. But we would want to be able to catalyze local corporates, VCs, to play a bigger role in terms of supporting the ecosystem. The reason this is a win-win for them is because even for them, they would want to innovate, but maybe they don't have the resources in terms of brain power, and maybe because of corporate structure, of course, they might not be able to develop such amount. So collaborating with the startup ecosystem would allow them to give challenges to startups, and then startups can be able to use different technologies, whether it's blockchain, AI, etc., to innovate to support corporates. What that means is it becomes a test bed for corporates to be able to innovate either for their products or just to invest in startups as a way to be able to diversify their risk portfolio. So the incubation center concept is what we are currently spearheading as a county government to ensure that we are able to have these incubation centers across all 85 administrative centers that are in Kenya. So what we are calling wards. So Nairobi has 17 sub-counties and 85 wards. We want to be able to ensure that this infrastructure is decentralized to the lowest possible point, and ensure that we are